Welcome to the Power of Care Spotlight. I'm Larry Moliterno with Meridian Community Care, and it's my pleasure here to be with Richard Harwood from the Harwood Institute, who's been in town for a couple days and no stranger to Youngstown.
Not at all. It's good to be here again.
Yeah, you wrote originally, the original work that you did about Youngstown was about 10 years or so ago.
Right.
And really talked a little bit about where Youngstown was at in our development as a community.
Yeah, what we found at the time was that Youngstown was kind of stuck, what we call the waiting place in our 5 stages of community life. And, it's a stage where people are just, they know something's wrong. There's a sense that something's off. It hasn't really crystallized for people. And at the time, what we found over and over again, people gave us the same line. They told us the same line, which was, we're waiting for the knight on the white horse to come save us.
Right.
And that was a number of years ago, and as you know, the community has really moved forward since then.
Yeah, and I think that your 5 stages, and I want to talk a little bit about what that means. And I know in the treatment side, we always talk about stages of change for individuals, and organizationals will talk about organizational change. Well, communities are no different. They go through stages of change, and that has to be sequential. Right. And the question is, how do you manage the movement through those stages?
Yeah, it's funny. A number of years ago, we were stuck ourselves at the Institute. We were wondering, why was it that some communities we were working in were moving fast and other communities seemed to be stuck or moving very slowly? Why is it that when some communities tried a program, it worked, and in other communities it didn't work? And so there was a moment at which we sort of literally put up on our whiteboard all the communities that we were working with and all the characteristics. And what we came to understand was that communities actually go through stages like people do, and that, as you suggested, you can't skip a stage. You have to work through it. And that the dilemma for most communities is they think they're in one stage, and when we actually work with them and take them through sort of a self-assessment that we have, they come to recognize usually that they're in a stage way before the stage they thought they were in, and that many of the strategies and programs and efforts that they were trying were simply misaligned with where the community is. And when that happens, you get stuck, people get frustrated, there's a sense that we can't create change. It's much like as an individual when you're trying to move forward and you think you're in one stage and you're really not. And it kind of breeds frustration, even cynicism at times, that nothing is going to work for me.
Well, and I think there's a very practical sense when you understand these stages, and you can look to other communities. I know here we look at Cleveland, and we've watched the growth of Cleveland, and a little bit of the,
Right.
It's went backwards a little bit. Now it's trying to come back again, so we can actually identify what these stages are. Help us understand a little bit about the stages. You mentioned the first stage.
The waiting
already,
place.
The waiting
place. The name came from the old Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. And if some of your listeners may remember that in that stage in the book and in real life in communities, you have a sense that something's off, but it's not crystallized, and you believe someone else is going to take care of it for you. And so you just wait.
So we look for our elected officials to be or we look for General Motors, the big General Motors plant. That's what's going to be that saves us. And really, in reality, it has to be a lot of those kinds of things that happen.
That's right. And then when you move from waiting place, it moves into impasse, which is the second stage. And what's the biggest difference between waiting place and impasse is sort of the emotional content. As I said, in waiting place, you're waiting for someone else. At impasse, you can literally hear people in your community starting to say, enough is enough. I can't take it anymore. Now, the problem with impasse is that none of the fundamental conditions in the community have changed other than you can't take it anymore. So you still don't have the leaders you need. You still don't have the organizations you need. In many cases, people are still talking past each other. And so in that stage, the mistake we often make is we believe because there's a consensus that things are off, that we have agreement about what to do.
So then once people say enough's enough, then the next stage is hopefully people start to come together in small groups and start talking about solutions.
That's the catalytic stage. That's where I think Youngstown probably is right now, the Mahoning Valley, which is the predominant conditions in the community are still there, often negative, where people don't think things can move. But what's different now is that you've got pockets of change starting to emerge.
And then in the next stage, hopefully these pockets of change come together.
They start to connect. You start to develop new ways of doing business. Now you're in the growth stage.
Right.
And in the growth stage is where you typically take on the more intractable systemic issues that you wanted to take on in catalytic, but you didn't have the strength and the norms and the productive leaders and organizations ready to do it.
And that's where community really takes off.
That's where a community takes off.
So this is really a kind of a good guideline to have people understand sort of one of the basics of some of the works that you do.
If you can figure out what stage you're in, you're much more likely to be able to accelerate and deepen progress in a way that builds trust, that builds hope, and a sense of possibility in your community.
And a lot of this information is on your website.
Go to the harwoodinstitute.org. You can find community rhythms, the 5 stages of community life. As you read through it, you can usually find your community there.
And there are also some things on your website that reference your work that you did here in Youngstown. And hopefully we're going to be seeing a lot more of you over the next few years.
I sure hope so.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Larry.